A cop thought he was making an example out of a quiet black woman. He dragged her into court, smirking, convinced she was powerless. But when she stood up in front of the judge, the entire courtroom froze. And what she revealed next didn't just end a case, it shook the entire police department to its core. Racist cop dragged a quiet black woman into court thinking she was just another nobody. But when she stood up in front of the judge, the entire courtroom froze. Something about her presence silenced everyone. If that moment had you holding your breath, just wait. What happens next will leave you speechless. Stick around till the end. And if this story moves you, like, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. The morning air still carried the soft chill of dawn. Kira Malcolm, wrapped in a muted gray blazer, kept her hands on the wheel. As she coasted through the sleepy edge of the city, her sedan was clean, but unremarkable, just like she preferred it. She wasn't in a hurry, didn't have music playing, didn't even glance at her phone as she waited at the red light. But as the light changed and she crossed the intersection, the flash of red and blue lights flared in her rearview mirror. She sighed, not with panic, not even surprise, just quiet understanding. The patrol car tailed her for another block, then hooped its siren. She pulled over slowly, rolling her window down, as the officer approached with heavy boots and a louder attitude. "You know why I stopped you?" he barked, hand resting on his belt. Not near his gun, but not far from it either. Kira didn't flinch. "No, officer, I was within the speed limit," he scoffed. "License, registration," and popped the trunk. There was no reason for it, no probable cause. But Kira moved carefully, gathering her papers with practice.com. "Do you always ask for trunk searches on routine stops?" she asked softly, her voice as level as glass. The officer smirked. "When something feels off, I act on it. This badge," he tapped it hard, "means I am the law out here." She looked at him, then really looked, not with fear, not with challenge, just a quiet study, as if reading a file she'd already memorized. He didn't like that look. He leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "Is that a problem?" Kira shook her head, handed him the documents and unlocked the trunk remotely. "No problem," she murmured. But her gaze, her silence, it unsettled him more than shouting ever could. As he stalked to the back, another officer pulled up, a younger one, watching curiously. Kira stayed seated, hands folded neatly in her lap. They rummaged through the trunk, opening bags, peering into compartments. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Still, the first officer returned, jaw tight. "Step out of the vehicle." "For what?" "Obstruction," he snapped. And just like that, the cuffs were out. The cold metal closed around her wrists as a breeze stirred dust across the curb. No resistance, no drama, just one last look in his direction, as if she already knew how this would end. But he didn't, not yet. The ride to the station was quiet, except for the static hum of the police radio and the occasional cough from the younger officer in the front seat. Kira sat still in the back, wrists cuffed, the tightness digging into her skin with each jolt in the road. She didn't ask questions, didn't protest. She observed. The older officer, Detective Neil Carver, glanced at her in the rear view a few times trying to read her. She didn't give him anything to read. At the precinct, the routine unfolded like a worn-out play. Fingerprinting, mugshots, property bagged and tagged. She let them do it. The officers passed looks between themselves, curious about the calm woman who didn't shout or cry. No one recognized her name. To them, she was just another number. Another black woman booked for obstruction because she dared ask a question. They threw her into holding with others in the same gray jumpsuit. Fluorescent lights buzzed above like judgmental wasps. The air smelled of disinfectant and unwashed fear. But Kira, she sat on the cold bench, legs crossed at the ankle, eyes focused on the far wall. Not lost, not afraid, just waiting. Breakroom Carver chuckled with a few colleagues. "Tried to hit me with attitude," he said between bites of his sandwich. "You should have seen her face when I cuffed her." Another officer laughed, wiping mustard off his lip. "Women like that always think they know the law until they hit the system." Carver leaned back, full of pride. "I don't care who you are. You mouth off, I shut you down." He had no idea who she was. None of them did. Later that evening, a clerk tried processing her paperwork, typing her name into the system, but something didn't add up. The screen flashed yellow. Access restricted, clearance required. The clerk frowned, tried again, same result. "Hey Carver," he called out. "You sure this is the right name?" Systems kicking back her profile. Carver shrugged. "Doesn't matter. Be in court tomorrow either way. Let the judge sort it out." Kira was moved to a holding cell closer to the courtroom that night. No apology, no explanation, just more silence, more waiting. But as she sat there, the guard noticed something strange. Even after hours in lockup, even after being stripped of her belongings and dignity, she still held her posture, back straight, eyes sharp, like she was evaluating the building from the inside. And maybe she was. Morning came fast. The kind of morning where the halls echo louder than they should, like the building itself knows something is about to shift. Detective Carver walked through the courthouse doors with the same cocky strut he wore during arrests. Shine shoes, rolled sleeves, swagger polished. He high-fived a court officer on the way in. You bringing that mouthy woman in today? The guard smirked. Yeah, Kara grinned. She's about to learn what happens when you challenge authority. In the waiting area, the prosecutor, Evan Blake, flipped through papers lazily. Anything I need to know about her? He asked without looking up. Carver shrugged. Just another self-righteous type. Thinks she's smarter than the law. They both chuckled. Then the bailiff called, "Defendant, ready?" Carver turned to look and paused. There she was, Kira Malcolm, walking into the courtroom alone. No lawyer, no family, no outrage, just calm. She wore the same modest gray blazer, hair tied back neatly, no makeup, no theatrics, but there was something different, not in her clothing, in her posture, no longer passive, no longer waiting. She walked with quiet purpose. Some in the gallery barely noticed her. Others gave her a quick glance, already assuming they knew what role she played. The judge, a middle-aged white man with a tired expression, tapped his gavel once. Casi 416 biches the state versus Kira Malcolm. He read, voice echoing across the wood panel chamber. The prosecutor stood, adjusting his tie. Your Honor, the defendant was arrested for obstruction during a lawful traffic stop. Kira sat, hands folded calmly. Carver leaned slightly forward in his seat at the witness bench, his smirk still holding until the judge turned toward her. Ms. Malcolm, do you have representation? Kira stood, her voice, clear, firm, but measured, cut through the courtroom. I'll be speaking on my own behalf today. Blake rolled his eyes. Carver chuckled under his breath. Proceed. The judge nodded. Kira reached into her satchel and pulled out a single black folder. Her fingers moved slowly, deliberately, as if every motion had weight. She placed the folder on the table and opened it. Carver watched, bored, until she flipped the first page up and revealed a glossy federal identification badge with a gold seal. The room shifted. The judge leaned forward. Blake froze. Even the stenographer stopped typing. Kira's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. My name is Kira Malcolm, she said. Deputy Director of Internal Affairs. Division 3. My jurisdiction includes this state, this precinct, and this courtroom. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Carver blinked. For the first time that morning, his grin faded. The judge narrowed his eyes. This is a joke, right? Kira turned the badge around and walked it to the bench, placing it gently in front of him. No joke. You can call my office. They're already aware of the arrest. Silence. Dead. Swallowing silence. Even the court guard by the door shifted uncomfortably. Carver's mouth opened, then closed again. Blake looked pale. And Kira, she returned to her seat. Oh, still unmoved, like the courtroom belonged to her now because in many ways it did. The judge's hands hovered over the badge for a moment, uncertain whether to touch it or speak. Finally, he cleared his throat and adjusted his robe. I need a short recess. Bailiff, escort Ms. Malcolm to the consultation chamber. Kira didn't move. That won't be necessary, she said softly, but without room for argument. I'd like the next few minutes to be heard. On record? The judge paused, studying her, then gave a slow nod. Proceed. Kira stood, picked up her folder again, and began flipping through documents, each one with a time-stamped photo signature. She laid them out like pieces of a puzzle. The stop was recorded on dash cam, she said. You'll see no violation, no resistance, no probable cause. She handed the clerk a USB drive. Here's the footage. The screen on the wall lit up. The gallery leaned forward. Carver's smugness was gone, replaced with shifting eyes and tapping fingers. He didn't look up as the video played. The room watched as the screen showed him smirking, tapping his badge and saying, I am the law. They watched as he forced open her trunk without consent, as he pulled her from the vehicle with no justification, as he cuffed her while she calmly asked for clarification. No aggression, no threats, no resistance. Only one person in the video appeared agitated him. When the video ended, the room stayed silent, the kind of silence that doesn't ask questions because it already knows the answer. Kira continued. This, she said, lifting a printed copy of the department's conduct manual, violates 5 internal protocols and 3 state-level statutes regarding procedural justice and civil rights. The judge's jaw clenched. She didn't stop there. This officer, Detective Neil Carver, has 6 prior complaints on record, all dismissed without review. I've been following him for 3 months. Carver finally stood. This is ridiculous. The judge slammed the gavel. Sit down. Carver hesitated, then sank back into his chair. Kira's voice didn't change. Still cool, still quiet, but sharp as a scalpel. I gave him every chance, she said. I remained silent at the stop at the station during processing, but this moment is where silence ends. The judge turned to the prosecutor. Do you have anything to add? Blake stammered. Your Honor, this isn't. We weren't aware. No, you weren't, the judge snapped. And that's the problem. He turned back to Kira. All charges against you are dismissed immediately, he said. This court will refer the arrest and all associated conduct to the State Disciplinary Board and the Office of Civil Oversight. No one cheered. No one clapped. The room was too stunned. Kira picked up her folder. She didn't look back at Carver. She didn't need to, because the man who once flaunted his badge was now sitting in a courtroom under review, his career cracking like glass under heat. By the time Kira stepped out of the courtroom, the building no longer felt the same. It wasn't just the weight of the moment. It was the shift in how people looked at her. Not like a defendant, not like a civilian, but like someone who saw the entire system from the inside. She walked past the court officers without acknowledgement. No nods, no small talk, just the rhythmic click of her low heels echoing through the marble corridor. Behind her, the judge stayed seated long after court adjourned, his fingers pressed against his lips. The prosecutor was still flipping through paperwork as if trying to make sense of what had just happened. But Carver, he sat in stunned silence, shoulders hunched, watching as his arrogance unraveled in real time. That afternoon, the footage from court hit the first blog. By evening, it was on national headlines. Coperist's internal affairs officer live reveal in courtroom. Badge meets justice. Power reversed in silence. The department scrambled. Phone calls flew between internal affairs, city attorneys, and public relations staff. But Kira had already submitted everything: dashcam footage, booking reports, disciplinary records. And she didn't stop at just the officer. She requested an internal review of the precinct. Every uninvestigated complaint, every ignored internal memo, every pattern of abuse swept under the rug. For the first time in years, the system wasn't hiding behind its badge, it was under it. Detective Carver was placed on immediate suspension. Pending investigation, his previous cases were flagged for misconduct review, civil rights groups called for broader reform. And within that chaos, Kira stayed quiet. No interviews, no press tours, no vindictive speeches. She wasn't there for a spectacle. She was there to do what she'd been trained for: expose what hides behind the performance of power. One officer, one case, one courthouse. But it was enough to make the whole department feel the tremor. The precinct lobby, once a place of casual greetings and background noise, now echoed with tension. Detectives moved quietly. Supervisors whispered behind closed doors. Every officer reviewed their own body cam policies twice, sometimes 3 times, because word had spread. Not just that someone from internal affairs had been arrested, but that the deputy director herself had sat in holding for 12 hours watching, listening, documenting it all. Kira didn't return with fanfare. She didn't need to, but changes followed. Her name like a storm cloud with purpose. Trainings were revamped, complaint investigations were reopened, and a new memo circulated. Subtle and signed, but understood. Every person you stop could be the one holding the pen that rewrites your future. Meanwhile, the media spun their version of the story. Talk shows debated it, social feeds exploded. Some commentators were furious at the system, others at the woman who dared expose it. But Kira, she ignored all of it. She spent her mornings reviewing misconduct files, her evenings walking the perimeter of her quiet neighborhood, and her weekends visiting the local community center where she taught kids how to recognize real authority and when to question it. She didn't want a statue, didn't need a headline, because justice to her was never about noise. It was about integrity that didn't need applause. 2 months later, an internal board offered her a promotion. She accepted, not because she wanted more power, but because she'd seen what could happen when the wrong people believed they had too much of it. And as for Detective Carver, he never returned to duty. His badge, once flashed with pride, was quietly turned in. His name, no longer spoken with admiration, was now used in training videos as a warning. He thought his badge gave him power, but in the courtroom that day he learned that real power doesn't shout. It speaks once, and justice listens.